From Ja Rule's wife putting him on blast over cheating claims with his own bodyguard, to Benz's partner dropping screenshots that had people talking about him liking men, to Trina hitting with just 4 words that had everyone side-eyeing French Montana's sexuality. This gets messy fast. We're diving into moments where rappers got exposed by the people closest to them, and the stories didn't stay quiet for long. Let's start with Ja Rule. In hip-hop, nothing hits like a comeback story after prison. It's supposed to be redemption, growth, a fresh start. Jeffrey Atkins, known worldwide as Ja Rule, stepped out of federal prison in 2013 after doing time for gun and tax charges. He came home with his name, his music, and his wife Aisha, his high school sweetheart who had been there before the fame, before the spotlight, before everything. From the outside, it looked like a rare, solid love story in hip-hop, the kind people don't see often. But then the internet started talking, and things got wild quick. In the lead up to what people said was an MTV documentary called Married Life After Prison, alleged quotes tied to Aisha Atkins began spreading online. And these weren't light comments. They were intense, emotional, and straight to the point. The posts claimed their marriage was falling apart, accusing Ja Rule of leaving her for a man he met while locked up, and even hinting at something going on with his own bodyguard. Suddenly, that perfect image cracked, and people couldn't look away. Those alleged lines, they were intense and super detailed, the kind of stuff that makes people freeze mid-scroll and read every word twice. The posts spread fast across gossip sites, moving at a crazy pace even before social media really took over like it has now. Within days, the story was everywhere, popping up on every corner of the internet. Blog after blog kept pushing it, comment sections were going off, and the spotlight stayed locked on Ja Rule, a man who had just come home from prison and was trying to rebuild his life in front of everyone. But he wasn't about to stay quiet and let rumors take over his name. He jumped on Twitter and shut it down directly, calling the claims false lies made up by some non-MF Factor website clowns, making it clear he wasn't playing about his reputation. He also made it known that he and Aisha were still together. No confusion, no mixed signals. His response was strong, emotional, and consistent every time he spoke on it. Major outlets like The Independent and HuffPost picked up his denial, spreading his side just as fast as the rumors had spread. And as time went on, one thing stayed clear. The couple remained married, standing together despite all the noise. What really stands out here is how little actual proof was ever shown. No documentary clips, no interview from Aisha, no recordings, no real confirmation at all. Yet somehow the story still felt believable to a lot of people. Sometimes all it takes is the right timing in a situation that sounds possible, and suddenly a rumor starts to feel like reality. That whole situation had emotional logic. It sounded believable, even without real proof. Ja Rule has said more than once that people pushing those stories were trying to tear his family apart. And from what anyone can see, that family stayed standing through all the noise. The rumors kept popping back up over the years, each time with extra details added in, but not once did anyone bring forward solid, verifiable evidence. So the Ja Rule situation, that was about internet rumors, anonymous claims, and words that his wife never actually confirmed herself. But what comes next hits completely different. It's not anonymous, it's not hidden, and it didn't stay in the shadows. This time, it involved a real person, real posts, and alleged receipts that anyone online could read with their own eyes. Now enter Benzino, Raymond Scott, a longtime name in hip-hop and former co-owner of The Source. In late 2025, he found himself right in the middle of a storm, and this one came from inside his own circle. Althea Hart, his former long-term partner and the mother of one of his children, went on Instagram and shared what she claimed were actual text message screenshots. This wasn't vague talk or behind-the-scenes gossip. She put everything out there front and center. People didn't have to guess. They could read the messages themselves. According to those posts, the messages accused Benzino of being involved with R&B singer Bobby V and even included lines suggesting he admitted to bisexuality, with statements like, "You was actually fucking Bobby V." The internet saw it all unfold in real time and things escalated fast. "And so you're admitting your bisexuality, OMG." Those exact words sat right there in the alleged screenshots for everyone to see. No filter, no mystery. Althea didn't present it like a rumor either. She framed it as betrayal, something she exposed after trying to hold the relationship together behind the scenes. It came off personal, emotional, and direct, like she had reached a breaking point and decided to let everything out. Benzino didn't stay silent, but his response took a different route. Instead of breaking down each claim or addressing every message, he came out strong with threats of legal action, calling it defamation, and making it clear he was ready to handle it in court. He didn't go into details, didn't explain line by line. His stance was simple. What she posted crossed the line, and he wasn't letting it slide. But by then, the damage was already out there. Once screenshots hit the internet, they move fast and stick around forever. The story jumped off Instagram and spread into major hip-hop platforms like Hot 97 and Hot New Hip Hop, pulling in even more attention. What really made this situation stand out was how specific everything looked. This wasn't vague talk or guessing games. It involved real names and alleged direct statements. Bobby V's own history in the spotlight only added more layers to how people reacted, making the whole situation even louder online. Meanwhile, Benzino has kept a consistent public image for years, and up to now, he hasn't confirmed any of the claims Althea Hart made. But in a time where screenshots take over the narrative, once they're out, they take on a life of their own. Denials don't always travel as far as the original claim. Once something shocking drops, that's what sticks in people's minds. Scroll a few posts down and the screenshot is still there, but the response, that part fades fast. If Benzino's situation was about a partner stepping forward with what she says are direct receipts, then other cases take a completely different path. Some older, some way more built up over time, and some shaped by moments in hip-hop history that were already intense. Now French Montana's situation, that one played out in a much quieter but still powerful way. Sometimes saying less actually says more, and that's exactly what happened here. French Montana, born Kareem Carbuch, ended up on this list not because of loud accusations, but because of how Trina chose to speak and what she chose not to say. Back around 2013 and 2014, the two were publicly linked, and people were curious about what was really going on between them. When Trina sat down for interviews, including one on The Breakfast Club, her words were careful but loaded at the same time. She made it clear they never truly dated, calling them just friends, and even said she didn't want to expose him. Then she dropped a phrase that had people thinking she called him a different type of individual. Media outlets covered the interview, breaking down every word, every pause, every choice of language. And then she stopped talking. No follow-ups, no extra explanations. What she had already said just stayed out there, and the internet did what it always does. Ran with it, picked it apart, and filled in the blanks on its own. When a well-known woman is publicly linked to a man and then goes on a major platform saying she doesn't want to expose him, people are going to start asking questions fast. What exactly is she holding back? What is she protecting him from? The internet didn't hesitate. It jumped in, picked apart every word, and started building its own theories from what little was said. French Montana didn't come out swinging either. His response stayed calm and controlled. He pointed to the timing of his divorce to explain their connection and brushed off the extra talk as typical celebrity noise. Since then, he's continued presenting himself the same way in his music and public life, without really diving deep into the speculation. But even with that, Trina's words never disappeared. They stuck around, quietly following him for years. And that's the thing about moments like this. Sometimes what isn't said ends up being louder than anything else. In today's social media world, silence can carry just as much weight as a full statement. The French Montana situation lives in that gray area, built on careful wording and unanswered questions that people keep revisiting over time. But not every story comes from a partner speaking out. Sometimes it's people in the background, industry insiders, or even heated rivalries that spark these conversations. And when it comes to Dr. Dre, Andre Young, this goes way back, deep into hip-hop history. The rumors tied to Dr. Dre didn't come from a relationship going public. They came from one of the most intense rivalries the genre has ever seen. Back in the 1990s, during the peak of the Death Row Records versus Ruthless Records feud, things got personal fast. Eazy-E took direct shots at Dre in diss tracks using harsh and explicit language aimed at questioning his sexuality, not just to insult him, but to tear down his image completely. At the time, this was seen as battle rap at its most aggressive. Artists saying whatever they could to win and embarrass their opponent. But even after the music faded and the feud cooled off, those same rumors didn't disappear. They stuck around, turning into part of hip-hop's long-running folklore. Those rumors didn't just fade away. They got new life when Suge Knight stepped in with his own claims. And Suge has never been the type to hold back, especially when it comes to saying something controversial. In multiple interviews, he alleged that during a tense moment involving Tupac, Dre made a statement that hinted at bisexuality when he was being confronted. That instantly grabbed attention and kept the story alive. But here's where things get tricky. Suga's version of events hasn't always stayed the same. Across different interviews, details have shifted, and his credibility has often been questioned. Sources like the Daily Beast have broken down the situation and its background, showing just how complicated and layered these claims really are. On top of that, figures like Mob James and Reggie Wright Jr., both tied to Death Row's inner circle, have revisited these stories in their own interviews, adding more voices to the mix. Still, none of this comes with hard proof. No documents, no recordings, no direct confirmation from Dre himself. And unlike other situations, this didn't involve a partner or someone close in a relationship making the claim. Instead, it came from a culture where personal attacks were part of the strategy. At Death Row, using someone's identity as a weapon in a feud wasn't unusual. It was part of the playbook. These tactics were about control, dominance, and winning the narrative just as much as they were about facts. Dre, on the other hand, has stayed completely silent on all of it. His response hasn't been words, it's been his career. Hit records, major business moves, and a legacy that kept growing without ever directly addressing the rumors. And that says a lot about that era, because back then, hip-hop beef wasn't just music, it was all-out war and nothing was off limits. Dr. Dre's situation was shaped by rivals using rumors as weapons during a full-on war. But Lil Wayne's story? That came from something people actually saw with their own eyes. No diss track, no interview, no secondhand claim. This was footage, real clips, real moments that got replayed again and again. Back in the mid-2000s, when Cash Money Records was running the game, photos and videos started circulating that showed Lil Wayne and Birdman sharing a very close, very unexpected kiss. We're talking Rap City footage, backstage clips. This wasn't hidden, it was out there for everyone to see. And in a genre where people had strict expectations about how men show affection, it left a lot of viewers confused and talking. Wayne was very young when he came into Cash Money, growing up under Birdman's wing from an early age. Their relationship has always been seen as more than just business. It was mentor and protege, almost like family. That dynamic made the situation even more layered because people didn't quite know how to interpret what they were seeing. When the moment was finally addressed publicly, Birdman spoke on it during a 2021 podcast appearance. He explained it as an emotional expression, saying he saw Wayne as a son, and that the kiss came from a place of deep, fatherly love. According to him, at the time, he believed they might not see each other again because of the risks surrounding their lifestyle, and that moment felt like a possible goodbye. He stood on that explanation strongly too, making it clear he meant no confusion by it. In his words, it was about love and connection in a high-pressure environment, and he even said he would do the same thing again under those circumstances. Outlets like Vulture broke down the full story of their relationship, including the highs and the tensions that came later. But Lil Wayne himself, he's mostly brushed the whole topic aside. Whenever questions come up, he points to his real life, his history, his relationships, his children as the answer. At different times, he's also shown clear frustration, making it known he doesn't like the idea that a moment of affection between people who see each other as family gets twisted into something else. The conversation didn't stop there, though. Wayne's evolving style, his bold fashion choices, flashy jewelry, and creative image added more layers that certain parts of the internet ran with. People started connecting dots, building narratives, and pushing their own interpretations. But at its core, this situation has always been about a mentor and a protege who shared a deep bond, almost like family, in a space that didn't really know how to process that kind of connection. Wayne's story stands on real, visible moments, footage that people could replay and analyze. But how it was interpreted, that's where everything split apart. And that's what makes it so different from what comes next. Because when it comes to Young Thug, there's nothing accidental about the conversation. His choices weren't misunderstood moments. They were intentional moves that got people talking on purpose. And the biggest difference? He never backed down from any of it. Young Thug, born Jeffrey Williams, didn't wait for rumors to find him. He stepped straight into the spotlight and challenged expectations head-on. Throughout his career, he's addressed questions about his identity more openly, more often, and in ways that kept people guessing and talking at the same time. The fuel for the rumors was never hidden. It was right there in plain sight. Young Thug wore dresses, painted his nails, used affectionate language for male friends in his lyrics, and even appeared on the cover of his Jeffrey mixtape in a full-length gown. This wasn't subtle. It was bold, visual, and impossible to ignore. He was reshaping how masculinity looked in rap in real time. And the reactions, loud, divided, and non-stop. By 2019, in interviews like Big Boy's Neighborhood, he was already addressing the criticism head-on, speaking on the judgment that followed him everywhere. Then later, on platforms like the Pivot podcast, he had more space to explain himself clearly, and he didn't hold back. He made it clear this wasn't confusion, this wasn't sluchai, it was intentional expression. He also addressed something important, his stance on the LGBTQ+ community. He made it known he had no issue at all and showed respect, while also being clear about how he personally identifies. For him, rejecting labels wasn't about distancing himself from anyone. It was about defining himself on his own terms, and he took it even further. He claimed he helped pioneer the entire aesthetic, painted nails, dresses, gender-fluid fashion, and said that influence passed down to a new wave of artists like Playboi Carti and Lil Uzi Vert. That's a big statement, and it added even more layers to how people saw him. He did admit that over time, public pressure made him pull back on some of those looks, but he stayed firm on one point. It was always about art, never about sexuality. In multiple interviews, he's described himself as the straightest man in the world, doubling down on his stance. What makes Young Thug's situation stand out is how it flips the usual narrative completely. Instead of reacting to rumors, he stepped in front of them, controlled the conversation, and turned it into something bigger than speculation. He wasn't exposed by anyone. He set the tone himself. The rumors didn't come from the outside. They came as reactions to his own bold creative choices he's never apologized for and never taken back. Whether people believe him or not, the impact is undeniable. The conversation he sparked is still active in hip-hop right now. Young Thug didn't run from the spotlight. He controlled it. Through deliberate style, music, and presence, he built the narrative around himself and faced every question head-on. That kind of approach flipped the script completely, making him one of the most talked about figures when it comes to expression in rap. Now shifting over to Birdman, his story overlaps heavily with Lil Wayne's, but it also stands on its own. Birdman, born Brian Baby Williams, has been tied to those same viral moments for nearly 2 decades. The footage, the photos, the reactions, they didn't just follow Wayne, they followed him too. But Birdman had to answer for it in his own way. Beyond the moments with Wayne, he faced separate waves of speculation, including a 2016 situation where a single, unclear, one-word response during an interview had people reading into it heavy. That moment alone sparked a whole new round of conversation, and it clearly struck a nerve. When he sat down with Hot 97, he didn't dodge the topic. He addressed the rumors directly, with no hesitation, making it clear he was ready to speak on everything people had been saying. His explanation for those moments with Wayne never changed, not once. Every time the topic came up, whether in interviews or public appearances, Birdman stayed locked into the same message. To him, it was simple. 2 people who grew up together, who built a bond like family, showing love in a way that felt natural in their world. He made it clear when he said, "I always looked at Wayne as my son. I'd kiss him again." That statement alone said everything about where he stood. Outlets like Grapevine and others covered those interviews in full, keeping the conversation alive as people continued to debate what they saw. Things got even more intense during the period when Birdman and Lil Wayne were going through a very public fallout. It wasn't just business, it was personal, emotional, and huge financially. And during that time, all the old clips and questions came rushing back into the spotlight again. But even with all that pressure, Birdman didn't switch up. Across every platform, every interview, his stance stayed the same. Strip it all down, and his message was clear. This is how he expresses love in his circle. And if people don't get it, that's on them. He handled it head on, directly, and never avoided the camera when the topic came up. Now compare that to Busta Rhymes, and it's a completely different energy. Busta Rhymes, born Trevor Smith, took the opposite route entirely. Instead of addressing rumors or engaging in the conversation, he's mostly stayed quiet, and that silence, it speaks just as loud in its own way. The rumors around Busta Rhymes have been floating around since the 1990s, moving from radio shows to message boards and into the era of early 2000s gossip led by figures like Wendy Williams. And what's wild is how long they've lasted. This is the kind of talk that keeps going even without real proof, just momentum and repetition. Coverage like Newsweek's piece on hip-hop's gay subculture gives context to that time, showing how certain names, including his, kept getting pulled into the conversation whether they addressed it or not. But what really makes Busta's situation stand out is how he chose to deal with it, or didn't. While others jumped on podcasts, posted denials, or tried to shut things down directly, Busta Rhymes mostly stayed silent. He treated the rumors like they weren't even worth responding to. There have been moments where he straight up avoided or shut down questions about sexuality in hip-hop, choosing not to engage at all, and that choice has been read in different ways depending on who's watching. Some people see it as confidence, others as avoidance, and some think it's a mix of both. But either way, that silence sends a message. In a space where everyone is expected to respond instantly, saying nothing at all can hit just as hard. Through it all, Busta built a legacy that's impossible to ignore. Decades in the game, a powerful image built on high energy, bold performances, and non-stop work ethic. No matter what's been said in interviews or online, those rumors have always stayed in the background while his career kept pushing forward. The rumors stuck around, always there, but never loud enough to take over his identity. And from the outside, it looks like Busta Rhymes made a clear decision early on. Responding would only give those stories more attention than they deserved. So he didn't respond at all. He let the music, the performances, and the legacy speak for him. Silence became the strategy, and the career kept moving without interruption. Now Drake, he took a completely different route, somewhere right in the middle of all that. And what makes his situation stand out is how it even started. It wasn't a partner, not a rival, not even a radio personality. It came from someone in the same industry, a peer. Drake, born Aubrey Graham, entered this conversation almost at the same time he entered the spotlight. Around 2009, as he transitioned from a Canadian teen drama into the world of mixtapes and then into full hip-hop stardom, people were still trying to figure him out. His image didn't match what many expected from a rapper at that time. He was expressive, emotional, stylish, and more introspective than what the mainstream scene was used to seeing at that level. And because of that, some people started making assumptions. Teyana Taylor even mentioned in an interview from that era that when she first met Drake, she thought he was gay, based purely on his vibe and presentation. It wasn't said as some major statement, just a casual comment in the moment. But once it got picked up and spread online, it quickly became part of the early narrative surrounding Drake, and the conversation took on a life of its own. Vibe even called it one of the more prominent and weakest rumors in hip-hop at the time. Drake himself touched on the bigger picture in a 2009 blog post, speaking on how hard it was to find role models who weren't constantly being shaped by online gossip. That moment said a lot about the environment he was stepping into. But what happened next? That became his real answer. Over the next 15 years, Drake didn't just respond, he dominated. He grew into one of the best-selling artists in music history, breaking records and reshaping the sound of an entire generation. The same emotional, introspective style that once had people questioning him ended up becoming the blueprint everyone started copying. That early speculation, it faded into the background. Today, it's more of a cultural footnote, a snapshot of how hip-hop once reacted to anything that didn't fit its narrow expectations of masculinity. It never defined his career, never slowed him down, and never changed his trajectory in any real way. In a lot of ways, the culture had to catch up to Drake, not the other way around. It just took time for people to adjust to what he was bringing to the table. Now his situation started from a peer's offhand comment that got blown way out of proportion, but Jay-Z's case, that's a different kind of story entirely. With Jay-Z, the conversation didn't come from something he said. It came from something someone else claimed he said, and it ended up being his former mentor who had to step in and clear things up publicly. Jay-Z, born Sean Carter, might seem like an unexpected name in this kind of discussion, but the whispers go way back, even before he reached the top of the industry. In the early 2000s, there was constant talk in certain circles about a so-called industry network, and his name would occasionally get pulled into those conversations, whether it was accurate or not. Jay-Z's name would pop up in those conversations alongside other powerful figures, with whispers moving through talk shows, forums, and industry back channels. It wasn't loud, but it was constant. The kind of low-level talk that doesn't need proof to keep circulating. The biggest public moment tied to all this came through his former mentor, Jaz-O. He ended up having to address comments that were reportedly twisted by media outlets into something he never actually meant. What started as one thing quickly got reshaped into something else, and suddenly it was feeding into a much bigger narrative. Jay-Z himself never really stepped into the ring to fight these rumors directly. Instead, his response has been something way bigger and way more effective. He built a public image that's nearly impossible to shake. We're talking decades at the top, a high-profile marriage to one of the biggest names in music, a family, and a business empire that stretches across streaming, sports, fashion, and spirits. That kind of presence leaves very little space for rumors to grow. While the chatter still pops up in old-school hip-hop discussions or random "did you know" conversations, it's never had real impact on his mainstream image. The reality is, the legacy Jay-Z built speaks louder than anything else. His world is so structured, so established, that those old claims don't really stick in any meaningful way. In his case, it traces back to a mentor whose words were reportedly misrepresented. But the next story, it gets much more direct, with a specific name attached and someone who's openly pointed fingers at where it all started. Erick Sermon, one half of EPMD, a production legend and a key figure behind the East Coast boom bap sound, might have the most clearly defined origin story out of everyone on this list. And according to Sermon himself, this didn't come from random internet chatter. It came from a specific person. That name? Wendy Williams. Sermon has openly claimed that the rumors about his sexuality started after a personal falling out between the two. What he describes is a private disagreement that turned into a public narrative, one that quickly took on a life of its own once it hit the gossip world. And from there, it spread fast, growing beyond its original source. He spoke on this directly in a 2012 Vlad TV interview, where he didn't hold back. He named Wendy Williams as the starting point and made it clear he believed the claims were completely baseless. He didn't dodge, didn't deflect. He broke down exactly where he thought it came from, why it started, and why he saw it as intentional. He's continued to address it across multiple interviews over the years, staying consistent every time. His stance hasn't changed. He's maintained that the rumors aren't true while continuing to present himself the same way in both his music and personal life. Some accounts suggest the timing lines up with the end of their personal interactions, hinting that the situation may have been driven by conflict rather than truth. That angle adds another layer, making the story feel less like discovery and more like fallout. What really makes Erick Sermon's situation stand out, and why it's such a strong note to end on, is what it reveals about how these stories can start. Not all rumors come from nowhere. Sometimes they can be traced back to a single moment, a single conflict, or even a single voice. And once they're out there, they can grow far beyond anyone's control. Some of these stories don't just come out of nowhere. They start from a very specific place with a clear motive and a real target. In cases like this, it's not just random chatter, it's someone making a decision to put something out there and watching it spread. Wendy Williams was one of the most powerful voices in celebrity gossip for years, and the way she talked about people could shape how the public saw them almost overnight. Once something hit that level, it became incredibly hard to undo, no matter what the truth actually was. That's why Erick Sermon speaking up and naming her directly stands out so much. It's a reminder that behind every rumor, every tweet, every screenshot, every interview moment, every diss line, there's always a starting point. Someone said it, someone pushed it, and then the world ran with it. And that's what this whole list really shows. How fast stories can spread, how long they can last, and how complicated the truth can get once everything goes public. If you made it this far, drop a comment and let me know which story surprised you the most. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because these conversations, they're not going away anytime soon.